Welcome back to Theology, and this episode will be on marriage and divorce. Thank you, Balvadis at Blue Sky. Balvadis asks, what does the Bible say about divorce, and how are you supposed to interpret that message in that case in this modern world? Um, Is there ever a reason for that is okay with the Bible for divorce, etc.? Then are there different rules for men and women, respectively, in the Bible regarding divorce? Well, certainly there are, and I want to go through a little bit about ethics in marriage and divorce in the Bible. First, let's just talk about the term biblical marriage and development of biblical marriage, because there is a development throughout the Old Testament and the New Testament, and the view on marriage changes, of course, because the scriptures are written over 1,000 years. So, but in the Ten Commandments, you have first of all the commandment, "You shall not commit adultery." And also the commandment, "You shall not covet your neighbor's horse, your neighbor's house." I mean, you should not covet your neighbor's wife, male or female slave, ox, donkey, or anything else that belongs to your neighbor. And so, what it talks about here is the wife in the marriage is something more of a she's owned by the husband as something like an ox or a donkey or something like that. She's property, she's not a person in the Old Testament. And if you think that this is just me misrepresenting what a biblical marriage is, let's go through a few passages in the Bible. You shall not commit adultery, but, for example, bigamy is okay. Men can have several wives, and all the patriarchs did, basically. When you move a little bit forward in time and you get to the law of Moses, there is certainly a view of women that it is okay to have them as sex slaves after war, spoils of war. It's totally fine. You see this in several places, but not least in Numbers chapter 31, for example. You may marry a woman that is kidnapped after a war, but you don't have to. And you can just keep her as a sex slave, basically. But if you kind of like a woman, then you can marry her. You can certainly also divorce her if you grow tired of her, but and then you can not sell her as a slave, but so she is not regarded fully as property at that point to be sold. But yeah, concubines, when you move a little bit forward in the Old Testament, you get to the kings in First Temple Judaism, and like David and Solomon and stuff, people like that. And sexual slavery is totally fine. They have several concubines in their harems. They keep wives, several hundreds, but also concubines, which are basically sex slaves for the king. Sex with prostitutes in all of the Bible, in certainly the Old Testament, it does it's not frowned upon the man having sex with a prostitute, but with a woman prostituting herself is certainly frowned upon. But it doesn't break the man's marriage, it breaks the woman's future husband's marriage. So that's the point of it. Since a woman is property, not a person by herself. So men can marry and divorce women. Women can't. Women are married to men. They don't marry per se, and women are seen as property, and they are not people. When we come to the New Testament, when we come to Gospel of Matthew in chapter 19, there is this verse that is very often quoted to people that are getting a divorce, that whoever divorces except for sexual immorality, uh, that they commit adultery. And this is it's really important to see the whole context here, actually, because Jesus is saying this. First of all, he's saying it to men, of course. So he is asked the question: is it okay for a man to divorce for any reason? And what he then says that no, actually, uh, you were not you were not created to be divorced. You were created to become one with another person. But since your hearts are so hard, then it is permissible for you to divorce. But it was never that was never the original thought or the original plan. And the only reason that it is okay is if the woman has sort of already gone off with another man. And then follows a very interesting passage, and we will come back to Matthew 19 in another episode, more on LGBT questions. But read the whole chapter because it's really, really interesting what it says about marriage and divorce there. But when we come to Paul, Paul certainly opens up to the possibility for women to divorce as well as men. He says in 1 Corinthians 7 and certainly in verse 15 that if the unbelieving partner separates, let it be so. In such case, the brother or sister is not bound. It is to peace that God has called us. So he actually says that it is okay for a woman to divorce an unbelieving man, or for a man to divorce an unbelieving woman. The principle here seems to be to keep the peace in the home. And certainly, if a partner uh, don't want to do that, or is constantly fighting over things that matters most to you, then you are free to let them go, as it says here. Now, it's really important to remember the historical context here. Why is Paul saying that it is okay if the New Testament before Paul doesn't say that it is okay? And it is, of course, because Paul is talking to Christians from a non Jewish, non Israelite culture. He is talking about Christians who come from other provinces in the Roman Empire. So it's Roman law and not Jewish civil law that is applicable here. when we talk about the law of the civil law of the marriage. But also there is a new focus that we are called to peace. Blessed are the peacemakers and all that. And if you can't keep peace in the home, it will not stand. And all your great energy that could be used to witness to people and getting people saved is used fighting amongst yourselves. And in that case, it's better to just divorce and let the other person go. Paul seems to reason here. Now, I have a few things, conclusion, and as to continue the discussion. It's hard to talk about marriage and divorce ethics in a system where one part is seen as property and not a person. Um, can you even marry uh, uh, someone who is not a person? So, what kind of ethic principles can we read out from there and then before we're trying to apply anything to here and now? We can't just read the Bible and see that, well, the Bible doesn't permit divorce, for example, uh, and then completely forget about, well, the Bible actually allows for um going to prostitutes or having several wives or um, having sexual slaves and stuff like that. Um, so, and that's all part of the Jewish law and the Jewish tradition all throughout the Old Testament. There's no question about that. It's not me trying to represent this in a bad way. It's just the way it is. That's what marriage is. The woman is not the woman is not a person in the biblical sense in the Old Testament when regarding marriage. So we have to define words like personhood and consent and agency and justice and safety before we try to define words like marriage when it comes to trying to understand the Bible, and certainly before we are trying to see whether or not divorce is permitted in the Bible or not. I would certainly say that Paul opens up for it, but it's also really strange to me in one way to try to find ethical principles and just apply them directly out of the scripture or books that are uh, 2000, maybe up to 3000 or 3600 years old. And just apply them to today. Certainly, there is a development throughout the Old Testament and into the New Testament, and of course, the view of marriage have evolved since then as well. So we can't just apply what the Scripture says word by word, but rather try to understand what the kind of meaning is. Anyway, thank you so much for today. Thank you for having been part of this today. I also want to apologize for the tech today. My computer has sort of broken, so I'm doing this on a little silly Chromebook or something. But let's just hope everything works out okay. So thank you. Have a great day and hope to see you soon again here on my channel. Bye.